It is Marian and my pleasure to be together with Mark and Maureen Sandford from Elijah Rain Ministry on this fundraising, Freedom House fundraising, memorial fundraiser in memory of Rosemary Borelli, my mother-in-law, that just passed away just a year ago. But she was the founder of Freedom House and impacted hundreds and hundreds of lives, including ours and Mark and Maureen's. And we just wanted to talk a little bit about it today during this special occasion.
And of course, being today actually is the day of that she did pass. And we just thought it was so apropos being connected with you guys because we go way back when. And it is just, again, such an honor and a privilege, not just to call you our friends, but to be co-laborers in the ministry together.
Absolutely.
And you have been really friends, mentors, counselors, prayer warriors for us, for Freedom House. We just thought it would be really special for you to remember some of the things that were special to you in remembering my mom.
When I look at Rosemary, I see in her a special quality that goes beyond what so many leaders or founders of ministries have, and that is she had a ministry of presence. If you look at Jesus was called Emmanuel, God with us, and that says that his ministry wasn't just acts of service or acts of religious duty. His ministry was who he was, and if that's a ministry that he had, then that's got to be a ministry that we have, who we are. And so when I look at Rosemary, what I see is two things. For one, before she was the head of a ministry, she's very astute, very knowledgeable about counseling, about inner healing, prophetic things, all of that. But she was also something that's mostly missing in today's culture. Mm. And that is, and when I was a kid, every kid I knew just about, or a lot of kids anyway, they knew that there was a neighborhood grandma, and you could go to her house for tea and cookies, milk and cookies, you know, and you could just come up to her door and say, "Hi, Mrs. So-and-so," and she'd say, "Oh, it's so good to see you," and she'd welcome in. She'd give you milk and cookies. And usually these women were Christian women, and they had walked with God all their lives. They had been through the storms of life, and they were like a pot of food that had been stewing for so long that all the flavors had they'd come to their greatest potency. And so what she had was that she was like that neighborhood grandma, really. And so when I came for counseling, Maureen and I came for counseling, she would call me sweetie. And no other professional counselor would get away with that. You know, people think it was totally unprofessional, but nobody questioned it because it was so real. She could create a perfect marriage between the neighborhood grandma and the professional counselor. And she could do it flawlessly, with neither one detracting from the other, but both contributing to the other, so that it made her a better counselor than most people. She just would sit us down and give us some tea and serve us, and she'd sit in her rocking chair and we'd sit in our overstuffed comfy chairs, and sometimes if it was cold she'd put a blanket over us. And she was so effective, and she had this simple wisdom. Like, I remember going to an old lady that I knew of, who was a neighborhood grandma, and she would talk about God, and she would say the simplest things, just simple things like, you know, Jesus really loves you and he has a plan for you. The kind of things that coming out of anybody else's mouth were cliches. But out of this neighborhood grandma, it was deep wisdom. And all the kids thought, wow, she's just full of wisdom, because things that were true, and because the messenger was a message, it came to life. And that's what she was. Only she, of course, she not only had those simple truths, but she had all these complex truths, because she knew how to counsel people and get into the dark recesses of their hearts. And she could do it with pizzazz and with clarity. And so it was just amazing to watch her. And another thing about her is she had authority.
Yes, she did.
You know, when I was a kid, we could sass mom. Well, we couldn't sass mom and dad, but we did. You know, we sassed mom and dad, and sometimes got rebellious. You didn't sass grandma, and it wasn't because she was scary. It wasn't because she was scary. It was just because there was something about her that wasn't sassable. You know, I mean, it was just something about her that was just so authentic that you just didn't go there. It's like sassing Jesus, you know. And nobody who, maybe some Pharisees sassed him, but little kids, I'm sure, never did. His disciples didn't.
They didn't need to.
She had authority, and an authority that was so bonded with love that the authority never felt oppressive. It always felt liberating.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's beautiful. I wish my mom was here to hear all this.
She's listening.
That's true. That's true.
And you know what? That you said that, I'm going to say, Rosemary, I know you're listening, so I'm going to speak to you as well as everybody and let you know what you meant to me. And now I'll cry. Sorry, Marianne. The first time I ever met Rosemary, she looked so deeply into my eyes. Rosemary, you just did. You looked so deeply into my eyes, and you made me feel so safe and so loved and so secure. And you didn't even know me, and I felt so loved by you. And during the times when I first met you, I was so insecure, and I was going through so many deep, deep things in my life. And you always made me feel like I was going to come to the end of it. You always made me feel that I was going to be very strong someday and stand up and hold my head high. And in counseling, Mark and I went to Rosemary for counseling together when we were having some problems. And she's so thorough. Rosemary, you were so thorough. You took all of these notes. You gave us all of these forms to fill out. And they weren't just forms. They were, how do you feel about this? What's your favorite color? It was her forms to get to know you inside and out and to care about every little part of you. You didn't just sit down and try to counsel us. You cared about every little part of our life. And another very important thing you did for me that I honestly never mentioned to Mark until this morning when we were talking about it is that when I left your office, I learned something clicked within my spirit, a very deep, deep sense of hearing the voice of God. I heard God's voice, but when I spent that time with Rosemary, something deeper happened with me, and I heard God's voice in a way that I never had before. And it never left me. It was like, this is how Maureen, hears God's voice. You just instilled that in me. And I want to say also, Rosemary, remember when you wrote me that letter? At the end of every counseling session, she spent a lot of time praying for each person. And she gave them a personal letter of what she felt about you. And anyway, I still keep that in my wallet. I've never taken it out of my wallet. And I won't read it because it's kind of long, but it was very encouraging me. And at the end of it, I will say, she said to me, Maureen, pretend you're singing a song to God. And she said, I hear these words in the song you're singing to him, because she said, I'm somewhere in the future and I look much better than I do right now. And I've always held that close to me because it took me a long time to come through the dark night and to come to that place where I could actually say, I like myself. And Rosemary, I like myself. And thank you for you've given me. Thank you.
She could impart a sense of who you were to you because she walked in who Jesus was and in who she was.
You know, when you were talking, Mark, about the grandma, with the little kids running, to grandma's house. Well, literally, that's what happened with my mom. She would be, this was when she was working full time before she went full time in the ministry. But she would get up like 3:30, and she would take like 2 buses or so to her job. And then she would leave her job about 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon, take a couple more buses home. But then every Monday, there would be a whole group of young kids waiting for her outside of her house. And she would open the door. They would come in, sit down at her table. She would give them snacks, and she would have Bible stories for the kids. And that happened weekly for many years. And then at her job, she was, what do you call it?
She was a receptionist that took the calls that came into the company.
Yes, and at that time, it was with, the operator, phone operator plugging in and all of that. And this little boy called in by mistake the company that she was working for, and it was the wrong number, but it was definitely God orchestrating the wrong number. And that little boy would call my mother the angel lady, and they kept in relationship for years. She led him and his siblings to the Lord. They never met, but my mother would send letters, and I don't know how many of his family members came to know the angel lady, and my mother led them to the Lord. So when you said that, that reminded me, there's so many of those stories that are endless, really.
Marianne,
But
I need to tell you something that I don't know if you ever knew this. But when Mark and I were going to Israel, your mother gave me a little folded piece of paper, and she had written, I never read it, but she told me she had written prayers for her children. And she said, when you go to the Wailing Wall, will you put this in the wall for me? And Rosemary, I put it in the wall for you. And I don't know if you knew that or not.
she told me, yeah. She, we talked about this before, but I'm going to mention it again. But she left love journals that she wrote for me and my two brothers. And it's love letters from way back when. I don't know how many years ago she started. And I'm not all the way at the end of the journal yet because it's so much to take in, but it's stories that she has shared that I even forgotten, through my time. But I treasure those love letters. I read them quite frequently, and I'm just savoring them because I don't want to come to the end of the journal yet. But that was my mother, always thinking, always feeling for others. So thank you for those wonderful stories.
And I want to say, I want everybody to know out there that Tommy and Marianne took on a major, major walk in life by taking over Freedom House. And I want to say, all of you that loved Rosemary like we loved her, would you just give to the ministry so that Tommy and Marianne can take it forward and teach people all of the valuable diamonds and jewels that Rosemary left behind? Because they want to carry that forward.
Man, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Words cannot express our gratitude for your time you spent with us to making this impact in this fundraiser. Thank you guys. We love you so much.
We love you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. God bless.